My phone rang at 2 a.m. My brother's voice came through the speaker, cold and sharp, like a knife cutting through the silence. Mom's gone, and everything she owned, it's mine now, you get nothing. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. What he didn't know in that moment, what he couldn't possibly have known, was that his greed just activated a trap that would destroy him in exactly 48 hours. This is a true story about how inheritance, greed, and family betrayal collided in the most unexpected way. My name doesn't matter. What matters is what happened next. Because sometimes karma doesn't wait for the afterlife. Sometimes it strikes fast, brutal, and perfectly calculated. Stay with me because the twist in this story, you won't see it coming. Let me take you back 3 days before that phone call. My mother, Sarah, was 68 years old. She'd been battling stage 4 lung cancer for 2 years. 2 long, painful years where every breath became a struggle and every day felt like climbing a mountain. I was the one who sat with her through every single chemotherapy session. I was the one who held her hand at 3 in the morning when she couldn't sleep because the pain was too much. I was the one who made her soup when she couldn't keep anything else down, who read to her when her eyes were too tired, who simply sat in silence when words didn't help anymore. My brother Marcus, he visited twice in 2 years. Both times he showed up in an expensive car, wearing designer clothes, smelling like cologne that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and both times, within 20 minutes of arriving, he asked about her will, not how she was feeling, not if she needed anything, just the will. Where was it? Who was the executor? What did it say? You see, my mother owned a successful printing business she'd built from nothing over 30 years. She owned 3 properties scattered across the state. She had investment accounts worth over $1.2 million. Marcus knew every detail of her finances. He'd made it his business to know, and Marcus wanted it all. That Tuesday night, I was finally asleep after another long day at the hospital when my phone lit up the dark room. 2017 a.m. Marcus's name glowing on the screen. My heart sank before I even answered because I knew. Somehow, I just knew. She's gone, he said when I picked up. No emotion in his voice, just flat, mechanical, like he was reading from a script. Mom passed 2 hours ago. I was with her at the end. That was a lie. I found out later he wasn't there. The nurse on duty confirmed Mom died alone at 11:43 p.m. Marcus didn't arrive until 4:30 a.m. Marcus didn't arrive until 30 a.m., just long enough to confirm the death and start making his calls. But then his tone changed into something I'd never heard before. Something that made my blood run cold. Oh, and by the way, I met with her lawyer last week. Had a really productive conversation. Everything's in my name now. The business, the houses, the investment accounts, all of it. He actually laughed again, this cruel, hollow sound. You get nothing, little brother. Absolutely nothing. Mom finally realized who the real son was. Who was actually there for her all these years. The irony was so thick I almost choked on it, and then he hung up, just like that. No goodbye. No chance for me to process that our mother was dead. Just his declaration of victory and a dial tone. Now here's what Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't have known, because his greed made him blind to everything else. My mother and I had had a very different conversation 3 months earlier. A conversation that was about to turn his victory lap into the biggest nightmare of his life. But first, let me show you just how deep his greed actually went, because what happened at the funeral would reveal the true depth of his character. The funeral was Thursday, just 2 days after Mom's death. Marcus played the grieving son perfectly. He wore a designer black suit that probably cost $3,000. He had tears on command, dabbing at his eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. He gave this whole eulogy about how much Mom meant to him, how she taught him everything he knew about business and family values, how he would cherish her memory forever. People were actually moved. I watched distant relatives pat him on the back, telling him how strong he was being. Meanwhile, I'd already found out through a family friend that Marcus had contacted a real estate agent the day after Mom died, before the funeral. Before her body was even cold. He was already making plans to sell her house, the house where we grew up, the house filled with 40 years of memories. After the service, family gathered at Mom's house for the reception. People sharing stories, crying, laughing, remembering. That's when Marcus pulled me aside into Mom's private office. He closed the door carefully, locked it, and turned to me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just so we're clear about how this is going to work," he said, walking around Mom's desk like he already owned it. "I'm selling everything. The business, way too much hassle to run. I'm closing it down and liquidating the assets. The properties, all three, are going on the market within 60 days. I've already got appraisals lined up. And those investment accounts, I'm cashing out and putting the money somewhere it'll actually grow." Then he walked up to me and actually poked my chest with his finger. "And you can keep Mom's photo albums, maybe some of her jewelry if you want. Consider it your inheritance, little brother." I looked him straight in the eye, and I smiled. A genuine, calm smile. That smile confused him. I could see it on his face. He expected me to beg, to argue, to break down and cry, to threaten legal action. Instead, I said just 5 words that made his face go pale. "Did you check the dates?" "What dates?" he asked, and I could hear the first hint of uncertainty in his voice. "What are you talking about? What dates?" "You'll find out in 48 hours, Marcus. Enjoy your victory while it lasts." Then I unlocked the door and walked out, leaving him standing there in Mom's office, confusion and the first seeds of doubt planted in his mind. The clock was ticking, and Marcus had absolutely no idea that every single asset he thought he owned was already slipping through his fingers like sand. But to understand how this was possible, I need to tell you about the conversation that happened 3 months before Mom died. The conversation that changed everything and set this entire plan into motion. 3 months before her death, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, Mom called me. Not Marcus, just me. Her voice was serious when she said, "I need you to come over tonight. Alone. And bring your lawyer friend, Jennifer. The one who specializes in estate planning. This is important." When I arrived that evening, Mom was sitting at her kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of meals as a family. Documents were scattered everywhere. Financial statements, legal papers, folders filled with printed emails, and her face looked so tired, but not from the cancer. This was different. This was the exhaustion of heartbreak. She slid a folder across the table to me without saying a word. I opened it and started reading. Bank statements, email printouts, text message screenshots. For the past 5 years, Marcus had been systematically stealing from her business. It started small. $2,000 here transferred to a personal account, $5,000 there, written off as a business expense that never happened. But by year $5,000 there, written off as a business expense that never happened. But by year 5, he'd gotten bold and careless. The amounts grew. $15,000 and $30,000, $50,000 at a time. By the time Mom's forensic accountant finished the audit, Marcus had embezzled over $340,000 from the business he thought he'd eventually inherit. "I hired an investigator 6 months ago," Mom said quietly, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had gone cold. "I didn't want to believe it, but I needed to know for sure, and now I do." The folder contained everything. Dates, transaction records, digital trails linking every fraudulent transfer to Marcus's personal accounts, screenshots of text messages where he bragged to friends about his business income, bank deposits that matched, down to the penny, money that disappeared from Mom's business accounts. It was enough evidence to send Marcus to prison for 10 to 15 years. Easy. "But I'm not going to destroy him," Mom said, and I looked up in shock. "I'm not going to put my own son in prison, even though he deserves it. Instead, I'm going to teach him a lesson about karma, about consequences, about what happens when greed blinds you to everything that actually matters." And then she told me the plan that would take 48 hours to detonate and change everything. Here's the genius of what Mom did. She created a new will, working with Jennifer and another attorney who specialized in complex estates. On paper, this new will gave Marcus everything, every single thing. The business, with all its assets and inventory. All 3 properties with their equity and rental income. The investment accounts with their stocks and bonds. Every single asset was listed as going to Marcus upon her death. She even had her lawyer file it officially with the county, making it a matter of public record. And here's the crucial part. She made sure Marcus found out about it. She accidentally left a copy of the will summary on her desk where Marcus would see it during one of his rare visits. She mentioned to a mutual family friend, knowing it would get back to him, that she'd updated her estate plans and finally made things right. Marcus took the bait completely. He became so confident, so absolutely certain of his inheritance that he started spending money he didn't have yet. New car lease, expensive dinners. He even told people at parties that he was about to come into some serious money. But here's what made Mom's plan absolutely brilliant. The part that Marcus never saw coming. 3 weeks before she updated that will, before she ever put Marcus's name on those documents, she had already legally transferred every single asset into an irrevocable trust. The business, no longer owned by Sarah Mitchell personally. It was owned by the Mitchell Family Irrevocable Trust, with Emmy listed as the sole beneficiary and trustee. The 3 properties? Same thing. Legally transferred into the trust with recorded deeds filed at the county office. The investment accounts retitled in the name of the trust with me as the authorized manager. My mother had legally moved 100% of her wealth into a protected trust structure that Marcus couldn't touch, couldn't challenge, and couldn't access under any circumstances. The will he was celebrating. The will he was counting on. The will that made him so arrogantly confident. It gave him ownership of absolutely nothing. Empty titles to assets that no longer existed in her personal name. It was like giving someone a deed to a house that had already been sold. Legally meaningless. But the trap got even better, because Mom didn't just protect her assets from Marcus's greed. She built in what Jennifer called a consequence clause. A legal time bomb hidden in the trust documents that would automatically detonate exactly 48 hours after her death. The trust included a provision that if the primary excluded heir, meaning Marcus, attempted to claim, sell, or liquidate any assets listed in the will within 72 hours of her death, the trust would be authorized to release evidence of financial crimes to law enforcement, and Marcus, in his greed and overconfidence, was about to trigger it himself. Let me show you exactly how karma struck, hour by hour during that 48-hour countdown. Hour 1 after the funeral ended, Marcus contacted the real estate agent he'd already lined up. He signed a listing contract for Mom's primary residence, the family home, putting it on the market for $780,000. He negotiated his commission, started planning how he'd split the proceeds. He was already spending that money in his mind. Hour 8, Marcus called Mom's business manager, a woman named Patricia who'd worked for Mom for 15 years. He fired her over the phone, just like that. No severance, no thank you for your service, nothing. He also fired 2 other long-time employees that same day. He told them he was restructuring for efficiency. But the reality was, he just wanted to liquidate the business fast and pocket all the cash without having to pay salaries or severance packages. Hour 24, Marcus met with an investment broker at a downtown office. He had papers drawn up to transfer Mom's entire stock portfolio into his personal brokerage account. We're talking about $470,000 in carefully balanced investments that Mom had built over decades. Marcus's plan was to cash it all out, pay the capital gains taxes, and use the rest for his new lifestyle. He started making plans for a new luxury car, a month-long vacation to Bali. He actually texted me a photo of a silver Porsche from a dealership with the caption, "Thanks, Mom, your legacy lives on." That text message made me sick to my stomach, but I knew what was coming. I knew the clock was ticking down. Hour 36, Marcus received a FedEx envelope at his apartment. Signature required. Inside was a letter on official law firm letterhead from Jennifer's practice. The letter was 8 pages long, written in precise legal language, and it explained in excruciating detail that every asset he believed he inherited didn't legally exist in Mom's probatable estate. The letter began, "Dear Marcus Mitchell, this correspondence serves as formal notification that all properties, business interests, and financial accounts referenced in the last will and testament of Sarah Mitchell, deceased, were legally transferred to the Mitchell Family Irrevocable Trust on a date 3 weeks prior to the execution of said will. As these assets are not part of the probable estate, your claimed inheritance is void and without legal standing." But it got worse for Marcus. The letter continued, "Furthermore, due to your documented history of financial malfeasance against the deceased, including systematic embezzlement totaling $340,127 or $127 over a 5-year period, the trust has authorized the release of comprehensive accounting evidence to local law enforcement. We have 72 hours from receipt of this notice to contact our office to discuss potential restitution options before criminal charges are formally filed." Marcus called me within minutes of reading that letter. He was screaming into the phone so loud I had to hold it away from my ear. "What did you do? This is illegal! You can't do this! I'll sue! I'll fight this. I'll take you to court and I'll win. That money is mine." Mom left it to me. He went on for 5 solid minutes, threats and accusations and denial pouring out of him. I let him finish. I let him exhaust himself. And then, when he finally paused to take a breath, I said calmly, "Mom knew, Marcus. She knew everything. She knew about every dollar you stole. She had forensic accountants track every fraudulent transaction. She had 5 years of evidence. And she gave you a choice." There was silence on the other end of the line. "The trust is willing to not press criminal charges," I continued. "Jennifer has been authorized to offer you one option. You pay back every single cent you stole, plus interest calculated at the federal rate. That's roughly $400,000 total. You sign away any and all claims to Mom's estate, and if you do that, the evidence stays sealed. If you don't, or if you try to fight this, the police get everything tomorrow morning." More silence. Then, in a voice I'd never heard from him before, small and broken, "You planned this. You and Mom planned this whole thing." "No, Marcus," I said. "You planned this. You planned it the moment you started stealing from her 5 years ago. You planned it every time you visited and only asked about money. You planned it when you laughed at me on the phone and told me I get nothing. Mom and I just made sure your plan had consequences." Hour 48, exactly on schedule, Marcus sat in Jennifer's conference room. The forensic accounting report was spread across the table in front of him. Page after page of evidence, bank records, transfer receipts, email trails. It was irrefutable and overwhelming. Jennifer had also invited a detective from the white-collar crimes division to observe the meeting. Just observe. Just sit there as a reminder of what would happen if Marcus didn't sign. Marcus looked like he'd aged 10 years in 2 days. His hand shook as he picked up the pen. He signed everything. The restitution agreement, $400,000 to be paid over 10 years, with interest, with his wages automatically garnished if he missed a payment. The inheritance waiver, giving up all claims to any asset from Mom's estate, now or in the future. And the non-disclosure agreement, if he ever contacted me with threats, spoke publicly about the family situation, or attempted to contest the trust, the criminal case would be immediately reopened and prosecuted to the fullest extent. My brother walked into that week thinking he'd won the lottery. He walked out broke, legally bound for the next decade, and haunted by the realization that our mother, the woman he'd dismissed and neglected and stolen from for years, had outplayed him from beyond the grave. The woman he thought was just a sick old lady had been 10 steps ahead of him the entire time, and he never saw it coming until it was far too late. But here's what haunts me most about this entire story. And it's not the money or even the justice of it all. It's what my mother said to me in that meeting 3 months before she died, after we'd finished planning everything, after all the legal documents were signed and the trap was set. Mom took my hand in both of hers. She looked so tired from the cancer, so fragile, but her eyes were crystal clear and sharp as they'd ever been. She said something I'll never forget. "I don't hate your brother. I actually pity him, because greed is a disease that makes you blind. Blind to love, blind to family, blind to what actually matters in this life." She continued, "I'm doing this not to punish him, but to wake him up. Maybe losing everything will teach him what I couldn't teach him as his mother. That love and loyalty can't be bought, stolen, or inherited. They have to be earned through actions, through showing up, through being there when it's hard and inconvenient, and there's nothing in it for you." Then she said the words that still echo in my mind. "You were there when I needed someone. Not because of money, not because you were expecting an inheritance, but because you loved me. Not because you were expecting an inheritance, but because you loved me. That's why you get everything. Not as a reward, but because I trust you to do something good with it, to honor what I built, to help people the way you helped me." Mom died 3 months later on that Tuesday night, peacefully in her sleep, according to the medical report, with me holding her hand, though I'd stepped out for coffee when it happened, something I'll always regret. Marcus never visited during those final 3 months. He was too busy planning how he'd spend his inheritance, too busy counting money that was never going to be his. Today, 2 years later, I run Mom's printing business. I kept all 3 employees Marcus fired and gave them significant raises. Patricia is now the general manager with profit sharing. The business is actually thriving. The 3 properties Mom owned, one is still a rental providing steady income, another I sold to fund what comes next, and the third, the one that meant the most to Mom, I converted into a community center and scholarship fund office for underprivileged kids who want to go to college but can't afford it. We award 6 full scholarships every year in Mom's name. She would have absolutely loved that. And Marcus, I haven't spoken to him in 2 years. Not once. Last I heard through mutual acquaintances, he's working a regular job in another state, making his monthly restitution payments, living a quiet and much smaller life. Maybe he learned something from all this. Maybe he understands now what he lost and why. Maybe he's become a better person. Or maybe he's just bitter and still doesn't get it. Honestly, I don't know, and I'm not sure I care anymore. But here's what I learned from this whole experience. The lesson that's more valuable than any inheritance. This story isn't really about money or property or investments. It's about charter. My mother spent 68 years building a legacy. Not just a financial legacy, but a moral one. And she understood something most people never figure out. What you leave behind isn't measured in dollars or assets. It's measured in the people you loved, the values you lived by every single day, and the lessons you taught through your actions. Marcus thought he deserved everything because he was the oldest son. Because he was the son in his mind. Because somehow just existing meant he was entitled to the fruits of Mom's lifetime of work. But deserving something and earning something, those are 2 completely different things, and Marcus never understood the difference. If you're hearing this story and you have family drama in your life, inheritance fights brewing, or relatives who only show up when there's money involved, remember this: greed always loses in the end. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but karma keeps perfect timing. It waits for exactly the right moment and then it strikes with precision. My mom taught me that the greatest inheritance isn't money in a bank account. It's integrity. It's knowing who you are and what you stand for. And the best revenge isn't hatred or bitterness. It's living well, honoring those who loved you, and using whatever you've been given to make the world a little bit better. Marcus got nothing because he gave nothing. He gave nothing when it mattered. He wasn't there during the hard times, the painful times, the times when there was no benefit to showing up except being there for someone you love. And in the end, that's exactly what he deserved. Not because Mom was cruel, but because she was wise enough to know that enabling his greed would have destroyed him even more completely than losing everything did. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is letting someone face the consequences of their choices. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is let karma do its work. And sometimes justice arrives not in years or decades, but in